Formula One has produced some epic moments over the years, and some have been so exceptional that we just can't quite get over them. The best moments in F1 usually come when there's a closely contested race or an exciting finish, so we've decided to talk about the closest finishes to races in F1 history. Let's get started. Starting with number 10, Moss vs. Fangio, 1955 British GP, 0.2 seconds. 0.2 seconds might seem like the slowest on this list, but you can't even imagine how quickly 0.2 seconds pass. Yet that was the difference on the line when Sterling Moss beat Juan Manuel Fangio, who will make this list a couple of times, in the British GP in 1955. The fact that Moss did it at home makes this somewhat cooler than others because he truly had the support of everyone on the circuit. Unluckily for Fangio, he actually raced well but just couldn't put the final touches to his race. Next at number 9, Schumacher vs. Barrichello, 2002 Austrian GP, 0.182 seconds. These two have been involved in some spectacular races over the years. One of the best we ever witnessed came in the 2002 season. It was probably the most dominant display of Ferrari, as McLaren simply couldn't match their pace, and BMW Williams were the only ones that ran them close. Schumacher had been fantastic that season, winning 4 out of 5 races, but it was his teammate Rubens Barrichello who took the pole and actually led for the entire race. In totally unfair circumstances, Team Ferrari asked Barrichello to give up his position to Mick Schumacher. Barrichello didn't agree to it easily, but gave in after the pressure, and eventually he ended up handing the win to Schumacher with the barest of margins. In fact, he delayed it just to ensure that there'd be no doubt that he was the superior driver on the day. Moving on, number 8, Schumacher vs. Barrichello, 2000 Canadian GP, 0.174 seconds. The next closest race on the list is another one between the two Ferrari teammates, Schumacher and Barrichello. This one too was a result of direct team orders, but it wasn't as controversial as the one in Austria 2 years later. In a dry-wet race, Schumacher started from the pole and he had retained his lead after 2 rounds of pit stops, but the rain intensified, and soon the Brazilian made inroads on his teammate. Within the last few laps, he had more pace than Schumacher. He would have easily overtaken his teammate if not for the team orders, which were to hold station. The finale was grand, and fans almost expected Barrichello to defy the team orders, but he decided not to, and they came across the line in formation, separated only by 0.174 seconds. After that, Fangio v. Kling, 1954 French GP, 0.1 seconds. For this one, we'll have to go back well over half a century to Reims, France, although it has similarities with the first 2 entries on the list because it was also decided by team orders. During the W196, which was highly anticipated by everyone involved at that time, Fangio took pole by more than a second over his Mercedes teammate Carl Kling. What followed was an even better race where Hans Hermann had to retire with engine problems, making the competition between Kling and Fangio somehow a lot more competitive. In fact, only 6 cars finished the race and then set a wave of fear into the Merc camp as they asked Kling to stay behind his teammate Fangio. Still though, the difference at the line was only 1/10 of a second. On to number 6, Baghetti v. Gurney, 1961 French GP, 0.1 seconds. 7 years after the close finish to the 2 Mercs, another close finish beckoned in Reims. This time though, the race wasn't between a teammate, and it was a proper race with an exciting finish. Ferrari was expected to be the favorites on the track, and the championship leader also blazed the trail in the French GP before spinning out of contention. However, his loss was Baghetti's gain, who defended the chances of Ferrari on his debut, winning a proper drag race to finish the 1961 French GP against the Porsche of Dan Gurney. They were so far ahead of any other competitor that Jim Clark, driving the Lotus, finished a full minute behind the pair. Some believe that the time of the race isn't accurate and the difference between the 2 cars was actually less than 0.1, but we don't think anyone will find out the truth. Entering the top 5, Stewart vs. Rhein, 1969 Italian GP, 0.08 seconds. Our first entry below the 0.1 second barrier came in the 1969 Italian Grand Prix. It was a fantastic race full of slipstreaming, and while we wouldn't call it technically the closest finish, it's still remembered as one of the best finishes of all time due to its ultra-close 1-2-3-4 ending run. The notorious Parabolica was greeted by 4 cars separated by less than a second, led by Jackie Stewart, who was pretty much certain to win his first championship. Jochen Rindt followed inches behind and was tailed by the likes of Jean-Pierre Beltois and Bruce McLaren. Beltois inched ahead for a split second before Stewart took a tight line and exited onto the main straight, going back past his teammate. Rindt, though, challenges Stewart, but couldn't provide the final push and finished 0.08 seconds behind. Then, Elio De Angelis v. Keke Rosberg, 1982 Austrian GP, 0.05 seconds. This is probably one of the races that shouldn't make the list, but it still does. It's actually the first race with a planned pit stop for fuel and tires, but we remember it for the crazy finish that followed. Once Brabham BMWs Piquet and Patrese retired due to mechanical issues, Renault's Prost took the lead, but he had to park the car car 5 laps away from the finish line, which allowed the likes of Elio De Angelis of Lotus and Keke Rosberg of Williams to try and battle it out for their maiden GP win. The duo was within inches of each other, and De Angelis made a huge mistake by going out wide as Rosberg pulled alongside. Elio, though, clung to his lead and won the race with a time difference of 0.05 seconds. Into the top 3, Senna v Mansell, 1986 Spanish GP, 0.014 seconds. How can we complete an F1 list without Senna? Senna in his Lotus was on the pole and had the lead as Mansell passed his teammate Piquet before chasing down the Brazilian on the twisted Spanish track. In fact, he passed Senna in an incredible manner, but Senna returned the favor with superb aggression. Mansell decided to get fresh tires, and that allowed him to pass Prost with ease before closing the gap on Senna. Somehow, though, out of pure desperation, Senna maintained his advantage with worn-out tires. But in the final corner, Mansell pulled out alongside the Brazilian. It was insane driving, and the finish was so close that Senna hung on by 0.014 seconds, which ended in one of the most impressive finishes in Formula One history. In fact, Mansell even joked about how both of the drivers should be given 7.5 points each. At number 2, Barrichello v Schumacher, 2002 US Grand Prix, 0.011 seconds. Yeah, the 2002 F1 season produced 2 iconic finishes, both between Barrichello and Schumacher, the Ferrari teammates. The Austrian GP result was still fresh, but Schumacher had secured the title, and that meant Barrichello was allowed to fight for a win. The German led the way from pole, and he was almost certain to win his 11th race of the season, but he decided to take his foot off the throttle before coming onto the main. Initially, you can notice that Barrichello holds off too, not sure of what his teammate is doing, but at the last second decided to go for it, sneaking ahead of Schumacher by 0.011 seconds. It was an outrageously crazy finish, and it wasn't a great look on Ferrari, especially after the comments from the racers. Barrichello, though, pointed out how a win is a win, and that's all that really matters. Ending with number 1, Gethin v Peterson, 1971 Italian GP, 0.01 seconds. The closest finish in the history of Formula One came some 50 years back when Monza hosted the 1971 Grand Prix. Monza had built a reputation for close finishes by then, and this race was something of a repeat of the 1969 dogfight. Peter Gethin, in his BRM, roared through the Parabolica, leading the race, but he was hounded aggressively by Ronnie Peterson in March. Tyrrell's Francois Sever and Mike Halewood in his Surtees chased the duo too, but Peterson had the slight edge and pulled level with Gethin. In the last moments of the race, Gethin would hold on by 0.01 seconds, while Sever took the final podium spot ahead of Halewood. For 30 years, this race held the record for the fastest Grand Prix with an average speed of 242.615 kilometers, but it was broken in 2003 in Italy. That's a wrap for this video. Which of these finishes do you remember watching live? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.